DLCs have been crucial for the success of a lot of strategy games in general. One DLC that particularly got me hooked with a game is the Mount & Blade Viking DLC. The content of the DLC and the new features just brought the game to a whole new level. Specifically looking at Paradox games, they are no exception to this trend, and are probably the most DLC heavy in the strategy game niche. Paradox games have now been dominating the strategy game market for years, making map games for specific parts of history. My favourite game of theirs is Crusader Kings 3, which focuses on the medieval part of humanity, and having a particular character-based element. But other games of theirs, like Hearts of Iron 4 and Europa Universalis 4, have also turned out to be incredibly popular. Just looking at some of the reviews as well, it's clear to me that most people agree that these games are good. The same, however, cannot be said unanimously for the popularity of DLCs in these games. Some of these DLCs have been absolutely hated by the fanbase, like Leviathan in Europa Universalis 4. Other DLCs have had a mixed reception, like Roll Court in Crusader Kings 3. And finally, some of the DLCs have had a positive reception, like No Step Back in Hearts of Iron 4. So why are the fanbase happy with the base game, but not so happy with the DLC policy? And it is a little controversial, to say the least. In this video, therefore, we discuss the positives and negatives of the Paradox DLCs. And finally, we will talk about whether there is a way for Paradox to fix the DLC policy, and have Paradox already begun to change their ways. Also, at 100,000 subscribers, we will be doing an Ulm meetup, so make sure to click that button to see this happen. So firstly, let's start with the positives of the DLC policy. One argument for the DLC policy that is constantly brought up is that regular DLCs are needed to continue to improve the game over time. Using the example of Europa Universalis 4, it first came out in 2013, and it is completely unrecognisable compared to today. There is hardly any countries in Africa and North America, making nations outside of Europe almost unplayable. The mechanics are also a bit rusty, and there's a lot of imbalance in the game. Westernising definitely hurt back in the day. Over time, however, the Paradox team have patched up EE4, leading to a complete transformation in the game for the better. And the reason Paradox have been able to add content and fix bugs is because of the influx in cash from DLC purchasing. And consequently, the game of Europa Universalis 4 can continue to increase its fanbase and meet the demands of today's gaming market. An opposing example is something like Fall Guys, which has fallen off a cliff since its release. A similar pattern to Europa Universalis 4 can be seen in both Hearts of Iron 4 and the Crusader Kings series. I personally love the DLCs of Crusader Kings 2. The DLCs also bring free updates, so you don't have to purchase the DLC in order for the game to evolve over time, giving you the choice of sticking to the base game or purchasing the DLCs to have a better experience. An alternative to Paradox's DLC policy could be microtransactions, infecting almost all modern AAA games. A game like FIFA has pack openings, and encourages a form of gambling among players, so they can get the next Messi or Ronaldo card in Ultimate Team. It's almost impossible not to get the best FIFA cards if you don't spend money within the game. This obviously doesn't mean that Paradox's DLC policy is perfect in every way, but I think we can at least agree it's far better than some of the other practices of other gaming companies. Another quite nice touch of Paradox games is that you don't have to pay for DLCs in order to play them in multiplayer. And if one of your friends has them, you can play with your friend and not have to pay for any of the DLCs. It therefore encourages a community that does multiplayer, and it's in your interest to play with other people. So now we've discussed the positives of the DLC, let's now talk about the negatives of the DLC, and why it's such a controversial topic within the Paradox community. The first negative point is the sheer volume of DLCs Paradox have come up with. For Europa Universalis 4, there's currently 64 items of extra content for the game. If you wanted to buy the Ultimate Bundle, which includes the base game as well as the DLC, the price is currently £293 with 10% off. So that's a bit less than $400 overall. Having this amount of DLC leads to significant bugs and balancing problems after a while, with so much content packed into the game. A prime example of this is when Leviathan first came out. It was absolutely hated, and became the worst rated product on Steam. This is because it broke E4 and made some of the new nations like Majapahit unplayable. One of the reasons the head developer gave for the amount of glitches within E4 Leviathan is because it's an old game with so much content packed into it, and therefore it's difficult to prevent bugs that pop up. We also saw a similar situation in other games like Surviving Mars. Another reason for the negative backlash of the DLC policy is that the DLCs are basically essential for the game, given how much content it adds. When we use games like Mountain Blade as an example, it currently has 2 DLCs, but these are very much add-ons, and you don't need them to gain the full experience of the game. Paradox games, on the other hand, certainly need DLCs. When we take E4 as an example, almost all aspects of the game are completely changed without DLCs, from combat to colonization to religions within the game. While it's good to have more content, and it means E4 is a lot more fun, it leads to new players who aren't willing to spend any money having a mediocre experience of Paradox games, in comparison to what they could have with all the DLCs. Given there's so many Paradox DLCs, there has been a level of confusion as to what DLCs to buy, since there are so many, and it's not clear which DLC would give you the best experience. While this DLC policy caters to veteran fans, the more new casual fans may struggle to understand which DLCs to get, and why they need to spend a significant amount of money to permanently experience the game in full. The significant prices have definitely meant the fans question whether it's worth buying all the DLCs. The final negative thing I wish to discuss about the DLC policy is that of Imperator Rome, a game that had significant hype around it, but many people initially didn't enjoy Imperator Rome, and a lot of people felt like it was a hollow game, needing a few years of development and DLCs in order for it to be enjoyable. While Imperator Rome was developed and became a game people enjoyed, many people did not return to Imperator Rome and went to other games they thought weren't underdeveloped. People argue the initial lack of content in Imperator Rome was made so because Paradox wanted to add a lot of DLC to it. So taking into account the positives and negatives of the DLC policy, there's some quite good arguments both sides. Regardless of whether you believe the DLC policy is good or not, it's without question controversial. Paradox, however, to a certain extent, might have fixed the DLC policy in recent years with some of their games. There is now a subscription model where you can purchase all the DLCs for just £5 a month. I feel this takes away a lot of the negatives and getting rid of a huge barrier to entry. The subscription model definitely saves people time, and people don't have to do intensive research on the new DLCs. They've also recently added a subscription model with Hearts of Iron 4. So it seems when there's a certain amount of DLCs, they change their policy to a subscription model, eliminating the negatives of the DLC policy for this game as well. Having said this, Crusader Kings 3 have just released its first major expansion, and people are already complaining about the price. So still, not all Paradox fans are happy with the prices set by Paradox, and perhaps this trend will continue for some of their new games. With Victoria 3 around the corner, I can only hope it doesn't have the same fate and reception of Imperator Rome, and there's enough content in it for fans to stop criticising the new economic builder game. What do you guys think of Paradox's DLC policy though? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, make sure to leave a like and I'll see you next time. Shout out to our Patreons: Shadow Singer, Jado52, Kargon, Flyerton, Henriki, Redguard76, and Xiaomi. Your support means a lot guys.